Her phone vibrated. "We need to talk." Her stomach twisted, not in excitement, but something colder. She met him that night, already knowing something was wrong. He couldn't even look at her when he spoke. "I can't do this anymore." Jenna blinked like she hadn't heard him right. "I have to fix things with Christina." Her throat felt tight. "So that's it? We just pretend this never happened?" Benjamin let out a breath. "I never meant for it to get this far." She didn't answer. Because suddenly it was clear. Benjamin wasn't choosing her. He never had. And he never would. Her world had just shattered. But she wasn't about to let him walk away unscathed. Jenna couldn't accept it. Benjamin had erased her. Like none of it had ever mattered. Like she had never mattered. He was fixing things with Christina, returning to his wife as if Jenna had been a mistake, a temporary distraction to be discarded and forgotten. But she wasn't going to be forgotten. First, she told herself she wasn't doing anything wrong. She just happened to be near his office, parked a block away, watching as he left work. It was a coincidence. Nothing more. Then it became routine. For months, she had been welcomed into this home, trusted with their children. But trust had turned into something else. She hadn't just watched the family. She had inserted herself into it. And when things didn't go her way, she made sure no one walked away unscathed. How does a college student, smart, ambitious, good with kids, end up here? What turns a trusted caretaker into a killer? And when Benjamin Marshall let her into his home, did he have any idea what he had just invited in? A quiet neighborhood. A marriage that, to outsiders, looked strong. But behind closed doors, secrets were unraveling. A husband who made a mistake. A babysitter who refused to be discarded. A wife caught in the middle of something she never saw coming. Affairs happen every day. Some end in regret. Others in quiet separations. But sometimes, they set something in motion that cannot be undone. A single choice. A moment of weakness. And suddenly, there's no way out. Benjamin Marshall thought he could control what happened next. He was wrong. Fairview, Ohio, a place where families come to settle, where neighbors know each other by name. The streets are lined with neatly trimmed lawns, flower beds arranged with care. On weekends, the smell of barbecue drifts through the air. Children ride bikes down cul-de-sacs, their laughter echoing between homes. It's the kind of town where people feel safe, where nothing bad is supposed to happen. But inside one of these houses, a family is coming apart, and no one sees it until it's too late. Benjamin Marshall had everything a man could ask for. A wife who had stood by his side for 15 years. 2 children who adored him. A thriving career in real estate that had made him a success. From the outside, he was the picture of stability. But inside, something had shifted. He worked late, sometimes by choice, sometimes by necessity. He told himself it was for his family, but deep down he knew the truth. He felt trapped. The same conversations, the same routines. Christina had become more of a partner in logistics than the woman he had once chased after. Then came Jenna Greer. She was young, ambitious, full of energy. Hired to watch the kids a few nights a week, she quickly became more than just the babysitter. She was easy to talk to. She laughed at his jokes. She asked him about his day like she genuinely cared. For Jenna, the Marshall home was a world she had never known. She had grown up with instability, a mother who went through men like they were disposable, a father who had walked away and never looked back. She had spent her life longing for something steady, something real. At first, Benjamin was just another father who needed a sitter. But as the weeks passed, she started noticing the way he looked at her. It was subtle at first. A smile that lingered a little longer than necessary. A compliment on how responsible she was, how driven. How different she was from the other girls her age. She started dressing differently when she came over. Nothing obvious, just a little more effort. She told herself it was for confidence, for professionalism. But deep down she knew. Benjamin noticed. A harmless text, "The kids were great tonight. Hope you're having a good evening," turned into something else. "Thanks, Jenna. You're such a lifesaver for us. Hope school isn't stressing you out too much." Then another. "You're too smart to be so hard on yourself. You're going to do great things." Then, late one night when the house was quiet and Christina was asleep, a message Jenna wasn't expecting. "I don't know what I'd do without you." She stared at it for a long time before she replied. And with that, the line between them began to blur. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet that only settles in once the kids are asleep, once the weight of the day has pulled Christina into bed, exhausted. Jenna stood by the front door, keys in hand, but she wasn't leaving yet. Benjamin followed her out like he always did, standing just a little too close, lingering like he didn't want to say goodnight. She should go. But neither of them moved. A joke about work. A laugh that stretched out just a second too long. His eyes held hers, and for a moment the air felt different, a charged, waiting. Jenna shifted slightly, her shoulder brushing against his. Benjamin's hand lifted just a fraction of an inch, but he didn't pull back. Neither did she. Then he kissed her. It was brief, almost hesitant, but the second their lips touched, something snapped into place. A door that couldn't be closed. At first, it was small things. A hand brushing against hers when he passed her the car keys. An inside joke exchanged in a crowded room. Then came the late-night drives, the stolen hours in his office, the hotel rooms that neither of them spoke about afterward. For Jenna, it wasn't just a secret fling. It meant something. Benjamin wasn't just an escape, he was a man who saw her, who listened, who made her feel important in a way no one else had. He told her things he didn't tell Christina. I feel like I can talk to you. You understand me more than anyone else does. Jenna held onto those words, turning them over in her mind, letting them take root. He needed her, and eventually he would realize he belonged with her. But Benjamin wasn't thinking about the future. Not in the way she was. For him, Jenna was something separate, something he could compartmentalize. It wasn't love. It was a distraction, a break from the life he had built. He told himself it wasn't real, until the moment Christina found the text. It was simple. I miss you. But it was enough. Christina wasn't naive. She had ignored the feeling in her gut for months, telling herself she was imagining things, that Benjamin was just tired, distracted by work. But now she had proof. A confrontation in their bedroom. Benjamin had nowhere to run. He confessed. Jenna was waiting, phone in hand, staring at the screen, heart pounding. Any moment now, he would text her, tell her it was over with Christina, tell her they could finally stop sneaking around. She watched him through the glass windows as he spoke to colleagues, smiling, laughing, living his life as if she had never been part of it. She tracked his movements, memorized his schedule. And when that wasn't enough, she reached out. The first message was desperate. Please, just talk to me. The second was angry. You don't get to do this to me. The third was a threat disguised as a promise. You are ignoring me. You'll regret this. Benjamin never answered. The silence made her pulse pound in her ears. If he wouldn't acknowledge her, she would find another way in. She created a fake account, nothing obvious, just a simple profile, one that Christina wouldn't think twice about. The first message was careful. Hey, I shouldn't be telling you this, but you deserve to know what kind of man you're sleeping next to. No response. A day later, another message. Do you ever feel like you're the last to know? Still nothing. Jenna gritted her teeth. Christina wasn't stupid. She had seen the texts, had forced Benjamin to confess. And yet, she was still there. Like Jenna was the only one who had lost something. That wasn't fair. It should have been Christina who was alone. Jenna's hand tightened around the steering wheel. Her mind drifted back to the knife sitting in her passenger seat. She had bought it on impulse. A simple kitchen knife, sharp and cold in her grip. She didn't know what she was going to do. But she knew one thing. Benjamin wasn't getting away with this. 2:14 a.m. The Marshall house stood in perfect silence. The streetlights outside cast a pale glow over the driveway, the windows dark. Jenna moved quickly, her breath steady. The back door was locked, but she already knew how to get in. She had spent months in this house, learning its every corner. She knew where the security code was, where the creaky floorboards were, where Benjamin kept his spare key. Inside, the air was still, thick. She walked the familiar path through the hallway, past the kitchen, past the living room. The house felt different now. Smaller, like the walls were pressing in. She climbed the stairs, each step careful, calculated. Then the bedroom door, slightly open. Just a crack. Benjamin was asleep, lying on his back, his breathing slow, even. Jenna stepped forward, standing over him. She wasn't thinking anymore. Not really. The knife was already in her hand. Her fingers clenched so tightly around the handle that her knuckles turned white. She had imagined this moment for weeks. 100 different versions. But none of them had felt as real as this. Benjamin stirred. His head shifted on the pillow, his brow twitching like he could feel something, like some part of him knew. Then his eyes opened. Confusion. Then recognition. Then something else. Fear. His breath hitched. His body jerked, twisting under her. A strangled noise, half a gasp, half a word that never fully formed. Jenna barely heard it. The knife plunged downward. The first strike hit deep. The second deeper. Benjamin thrashed, his hands grasping at her wrists, his legs kicking out. But Jenna was relentless. She wasn't letting go. A sharp, gurgling noise escaped his throat. His movements slowed, then stopped. Jenna exhaled. Her shoulders dropped. The weight of her own breath filled the silence. For the first time in weeks, she felt steady. Then she heard it. A sound behind her. A gasp. Christina. Jenna turned. She had seen too much. Christina lunged, but Jenna was already moving. The knife slashed out, catching her in the arm, then across the side. Christina collapsed onto the floor, gasping, bleeding. Jenna stood over her, breathless, her hands shaking. Her whole body was shaking. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, she ran. A thud, then another. The kind of noise that doesn't belong in the dead of night. The neighbor sat up in bed, ears straining in the silence. For a moment, there was nothing. Then a voice, muffled, weak, a gasp, then silence. Something was wrong. Their hands trembled as they reached for the phone. 911. I think someone's being attacked. I heard screaming. Then it just stopped. The dispatcher's voice was calm, asking for details, but the neighbor wasn't listening anymore. They had stepped onto their porch, scanning the Marshall house. Everything looked normal. No movement inside. No lights flickering on. Then, in the distance, sirens. The house was still. Too still. Detective Jonathan Wells stood at the threshold, taking it all in. The front door was slightly open, no sign of forced entry. A robbery? Unlikely. A personal attack? More likely. Then the scent. Coppery. Heavy. Blood. An officer moved ahead of him, stepping cautiously into the dim hallway. His boot pressed into something warm, sticky. Wells knew what they were about to find before they even entered the bedroom. And then there he was. Benjamin Marshall. Lying in a bed soaked with blood, his body torn apart by the frenzied violence of someone who wanted him to suffer. This wasn't quick. This wasn't an accident. This was rage. Then, a noise barely audible. A breath. They found Christina Marshall on the floor. Barely conscious. Gasping, struggling, one hand pressed weakly against her stomach. Blood pooling beneath her. An officer crouched beside her, his voice soft but urgent. Ma'am, help is coming. Can you tell me who did this? Christina's lips trembled. Her voice was nothing more than air. One word. Jenna. Jenna Greer was gone. And that told Wells everything he needed to know. Murders like this? They were personal. This wasn't about money. It wasn't a random break-in. It was about betrayal. Jenna had been part of the Marshall household for months. She knew the house. She knew their routine. She knew exactly how to get in. Security footage from a gas station captured her car speeding out of town minutes after the murder. Her phone? Turned off. Her apartment? Abandoned. She was running. But Wells had worked enough of these cases to know one thing: people like Jenna don't have an exit strategy. She was emotional. Desperate. She hadn't planned for what would happen next. And that's what got her caught. Less than 12 hours later, they found her. A cheap motel. 50 miles outside of town. Wells had pictured her panicked, crying, pacing the room, waiting for the knock at the door. But when they entered, Jenna wasn't crying. She was sitting on the bed, motionless, blank-faced, like she had been expecting them. An officer raised his gun. Jenna Greer, you're under arrest. She didn't move, didn't resist, but something twitched just for a second. Her fingers, barely noticeable, a reflex she couldn't suppress. Then she finally spoke. Soft, detached, empty. I had no choice. She didn't say anything else. Prosecutor Angela Preston had seen obsession before. But not like this. Not this calculated. Not this inevitable. The diary came first. Pages and pages of Jenna's handwriting. At first, it was love. Then frustration. Then rage. The text messages. Hundreds of them. Some begging, pleading for Benjamin to take her back. Others darker. You'll regret this. And finally, the knife. Purchased 2 weeks before the murder. Sitting in the evidence locker. Still covered in Benjamin Marshall's blood. This wasn't a woman scorned. This was a woman who refused to let go. The trial was a spectacle. A babysitter turned killer. A brutal crime that destroyed a family. A woman who had once been welcomed into their home, now sitting in shackles, accused of betrayal and murder. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, spectators, people who had followed every grim detail of the case. The cameras flashed as Jenna Greer was led in, wearing the orange jumpsuit of someone who no longer had control over their own life. She didn't look afraid. She didn't even look sorry. When the charges were read, she spoke the words calmly, clearly, not guilty. Her defense attorney, Kyle Henderson, wasted no time. Jenna Greer is not a killer, he told the jury. She is a victim. He painted a picture of a young woman seduced and discarded by an older man who used her until she became a threat. He told them Benjamin had turned violent when Jenna threatened to tell his wife, that she had fought back, that she had acted out of fear. Jenna played the part well. She wiped at her eyes, her voice trembling. I loved him. I never wanted this to happen. She turned to the jury, her expression soft, pleading. He attacked me first. What was I supposed to do? It was a good performance. But the jury wasn't buying it. Because then, Christina Marshall took the stand. The room fell silent. She still bore the scars from that night. The thin, jagged line along her arm. The deeper wound near her ribs. Marks that would never fully fade. Her hands trembled slightly as she took the oath. But when she spoke, her voice was clear. I woke up to my husband choking on his own blood. She swallowed hard, gripping the witness stand like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I saw her standing there. And she wasn't scared. She wasn't panicked. She turned her gaze to Jenna, holding it. She was calm. A few jurors shifted in their seats. The words lingered in the air. Jenna sat still, but something in her jaw tightened. They moved on to the evidence. The diary, pages filled with ink-smudged confessions. First love, then frustration, then rage. The text messages, hundreds of them, some begging, some warning. You'll regret this. And finally, the knife, purchased 2 weeks before the murder. It had been sitting in an evidence locker ever since, still covered in Benjamin Marshall's blood. This wasn't self-defense. This was obsession, rage, revenge. And the jury saw it for exactly what it was. The verdict was swift. Guilty. First-degree murder. Attempted murder. The judge's voice didn't waver. Jenna Greer, you are sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jenna sat still. No tears. No protests. But for the first time, something flickered in her eyes. She had always believed, deep down, that she would find a way out of this. But now, there was no way out. Christina Marshall walked out of the courthouse alone. No husband waiting beside her. No normal life to return to. She had survived. But survival wasn't the same as healing. People stopped inviting her places. Not because they didn't care, because they didn't know what to say. The pity in their eyes was unbearable. So she stopped going out. The house was too big now. Too empty. Every room a reminder of what had been stolen from her. She had thought about selling it. Leaving town. But where would she go? She didn't have an answer. And in the once idyllic neighborhood, the house sat empty for months. A reminder of what had happened there. People whispered about the Marshalls when they passed by. About Jenna. And somewhere, in a prison miles away, Jenna lay awake in her cell. She had no phone. No messages. No one left to call. She reached for her pillow, fingers curling around the fabric, pressing her face into it. It smelled like nothing. A blank, sterile nothingness. For the first time in her life, there was no one waiting for her. Was this tragedy inevitable? Could it have been prevented if Benjamin had made a different choice? If Jenna had let go? If Christina had seen the warning signs sooner? Or was this always building to one violent, irreversible night? Obsession is a dangerous thing. It doesn't happen all at once. It grows, festers, twists itself into something unrecognizable. Jenna Greer believed she was fighting for love. But in the end, love had nothing to do with it. How far would you go for love? At what point does heartbreak turn to rage? And when does a person decide that if they can't have someone, no one can? Justice was served. Jenna will never walk free again. But was it enough? Benjamin Marshall is still gone. Christina will carry the scars inside and out for the rest of her life. And an entire community was left shaken by a crime that never should have happened. No sentence can undo that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think justice was truly served? Could this have been prevented? If you found this case as gripping as I did, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth true crime stories. And don't forget to turn on notifications because next time we're diving into a case even more shocking. One where the killer wasn't who everyone expected. I'll see you then.